All right, and we're back.
And we're back.
So excited to have such an incredible guest today. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. So happy to be here.
It's such an honor. We're fans of your brand. I got introduced to it several years ago at an event in Los Angeles, and I that y'all were hosting, I think, and
And it's maybe at our location.
I think it must have been. I was like, it was, it feels like forever ago now, but
COVID.
it was so much fun. And so whenever, the opportunity arose to have you on the podcast and be able to dive deeper and understand like the brand and your story on a deeper level, we were so excited. We were like, yes, 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 yes. And so really, really honored to have you here today to share not only your story, but the brand story and how y'all have gotten to where you are today. So to kick it off, we'd like to just kind of take it back to the beginning. If you think about the beginning of your career, the beginning of your story, where would that start for you that you can remember?
Well, I think maybe I might get to be your most beginning because I started working on OSEA when I was 16. Um,
Wow.
so we've been doing it for decades now. And it all really started. My mom created the idea and concept of OSEA. And growing up, we really did grow up with bathtubs full of seaweed, a kitchen full of essential oils. My mom had run a wellness center in the 80s and was looking for natural, clean products that were aligned with the kinds of food she wanted to eat. She, so, because her thought, which was radical at the time, which is what we put on our body is similar to what we put in our body. Um, she couldn't find anything, started making her own formulas, and that was really the birth of OSEA. And I got to grow up alongside OSEA. So in the mid 90s, when my mom finally had her formulas perfected, it was just kind of part of our household and part of our family. And I was the oldest, had always been really entrepreneurial, mostly by necessity, because if we wanted something, we had to find a creative way to make money. I decided to jump in and start helping. So I have been working on OSEA the majority of my life. So it's pretty crazy.
Wow, wow. I love that it's been this generational gift that your mom and her mom really was able to pass down, and that you said you were able to grow up with it. As you kind of went through that experience, what would you say you've kind of leaned into and is now your role, going from 16-year-old self and going through that whole journey to where you're at now? What was kind of your role then and your role now, and how that's kind of changed over the years?
So you really did pick up on, I think, something that drives and inspires me and is so connected to the ethos of the brand and everything we do, which is the multi-generational wisdom of women. And the brand was really inspired by my great grandmother, who was the first woman to go to chiropractic school. She started a polar bear club in the 1930s where she swam in the ocean on the East Coast in this like very different weather than we have in California, close to 300 days a year.
Wow.
And so much of the brand is inspired by her wisdom, which was then passed on. And I think so much of what I do now is my role has really been to grow the business and build the business and take it to the next level and share the business, and share the products and share the vision. And I look at my job as the responsibility and privilege of sharing the wisdom of all the women in my family and continuing to stay adamantly so committed to our original vision, which was clean, safe, effective products that are good for you and good for the environment. And it's been really fun to do that because now that's something customers are looking for, women are seeking. And OSEA, in terms of that mission and vision, we haven't changed since 1996. Our logo, our product has evolved. We've added new products, our packaging, and really our commitment to clean, safe products wasn't even called clean beauty then, has been unwavering. So my job is both to grow. The simplified answer is my job is to really grow it and stay unwavering in that commitment.
Wow, that's incredible. I think whenever you think of how deep, it goes and how deep the mission and the purpose goes generationally, but really to the roots of the brand and how it got started too, and how y'all have stayed so committed, it really is inspiring. I think because so many people I see start their businesses from, wanting to change the world in a good way and make a positive impact. As you were getting started at 16 and you were really kind of seeing what this was and seeing what it could be, what were some of the initial conversations that y'all as a family run business were having um, for how you were going to take that mission and that vision and put them into a product and get them into the world? What were some of those first steps that y'all were taking even back then?
Well, I think so much of that was really driven by my mom's vision, which she was so clear on from the start. Sustainability was a key pillar and driver from the beginning. It was just so fringe at the time to be talking about sustainability and luxury skincare products. So I think a lot of what we were talking about then was just because everyone disagrees with us, we're not going to change what we're doing. And that conversation, it wasn't disagreed, it was just more like there was some disagreement. There was like complaints that the products were in glass and didn't have a perfume. And it was just very counter to the norm at the time. And that conversation's really evolved now that consumer awareness and the conversation has shifted. And similarly, with the ways we grew the business, it was also a totally different conversation. There was no such thing as the internet. It was just starting. And to imagine social media and all of these really accessible ways of growing a brand that didn't even exist then.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, going through decades of being able to really promote that message, I'm sure has evolved so much over the years. And being a trailblazer, really in an industry that kind of is combating you, it sounds like, of wanting those things that we now know are kind of poisonous and we are looking to avoid. But back then, it's very interesting to hear that you were getting those as complaints and as almost demands to have in the products. So, what were some of the ways that you were able to kind of push back and to able to educate and market your customers over the years? Maybe from when it first started, pre-internet days to maybe some of your more marketing campaigns and things you're doing now.
I think that back then, I mean, we really just didn't have access to the tools that we have now. Gosh, if we had TikTok in the 90s and um it was the landscape with clean beauty, our approach would have been so different, which is also so applicable to consider with anyone who's building a business of like looking at
Yeah.
the long term and the near term and how you talk about things. We were really limited in our marketing tools. Most of it was like in-person education my mom and I did. So we spent a lot of time focusing on our philosophy and our mission, and we really focused on education. It was a totally novel concept that the skin is the largest organ in our body. And it was like maybe in like the early 2000s when the birth control patch came out. And I was so excited because that was like a moment where we could communicate how things are topically absorbed into your skin. So we focused a lot on education. We were also really involved in legislation and regulatory work. I think now what I really emphasize in the branding and marketing is the the fact that clean is, you could almost say, table stakes now. I really strive to make it clear that that's actually our reason for existing. We didn't jump on the clean beauty wagon. We were here long before it started, and we hope, obviously, as a concept and a standard, it never shifts. But if it were to change, we're not going anywhere. And so by continuing to talk about our mission in an unchanging, totally consistent way, I think it speaks very loudly to our consumer, to someone who's
Mm,
aligned with our values.
yeah,
We're not
absolutely.
for everyone. And that's like something we've always wanted to say. Like, that's not a value that everyone shares, in terms of their lifestyle choices with food or products. So I think that's something that's always been important to understand. Like, you just can't be for everyone.
Yeah, which can be kind of hard whenever you're first getting started. Like you want to help everybody with, the mission that you have and you want everybody to jump on that. I've seen that, it can be very tempting to try to, appeal to a broader audience. As you look back at the journey and you look at how these marketing, the way that you've talked to your consumers, the way that you've engaged with your consumers has shifted, I'm curious as you think back, what was maybe one of the key pivotal moments that you look back at and you're like, wow, that moment really changed the game for us. That moment really kept us, staying ahead of the curve. I'm curious as you've been a brand that's been a lot around for a long time now.
I think there's been so many different moments. One key moment, it's interesting because so many of the shifting points of the business, they didn't come from anything new. So I'll give a couple of examples, because I think when I'm talking to entrepreneurs, and someone who's just starting on their journey or midway through, I always like to take the time to remind about how long things take. And we get this impression that everything happens overnight. And my joke is always, we're like a 25-year overnight success. So there were two moments that really drove quite a bit of our success. So in 2010, we launched a body oil, and I would imagine many listeners are already users. This is our top selling product. It's called Undaria Algae Body Oil. And I used to always joke that this was like a crazy product because it's so time consuming to make. We hand soak seaweed for months to infuse the minerals into botanical oils. And it was like one of our worst selling products. We launched it in 2010. And there just wasn't any awareness around body oils as a category, but my mom was really passionate about it. And I was happy it didn't sell very well because it took so long to make. So in um, 2018, in the fires in Malibu, our family's house burned down, and it was like the biggest time of stress. It was crazy. Fortunately, we just moved the office out of the house, but we had developed this big celebrity following totally organically. And Victoria Beckham was a huge fan of the product. And she saw that our house burned down and sent us a message. And she, was like, I'm so sorry. And then started posting about the product. And there was something about the timing of getting that level of visibility and body care just starting to take off, where that became such a huge moment for us. And it really started to drive our body care business. But I think what I emphasize is like, we've been in the body care game for 8 years already, that it wasn't like something happened overnight. It was something consistently that we were doing that had a moment. And we had a similar moment of expansion in 2020, in the early months of COVID. At first, it was such a stressful time because I'd made so many products in advance anticipating COVID. And then, everything shut down, as we all remember. Um, and then realized how accessible digital marketing spend had become. And we were able to turn that on and just scale the brand in a totally different way. But that was another example. It was stuff we were already doing. We'd been working on our digital and D2C growth for years. And having like a little bit of fuel on top of it just helped push us to the next level. And when I look at all of our big inflection points, it's usually something we've been working on for a while that takes off versus this idea that you have a brilliant idea overnight. And sometimes you do, and that's amazing. But I really like to share experiences of being really patient.
That is so true. Yeah, I think a lot of the times we see kind of the quote unquote overnight success, the end result, and we think, oh, like I want that. Why is my business not there yet? And you don't see the years that go into the hard work and the continued effort. And so definitely hear that. And I think that so many entrepreneurs really feel that. And so over the years, as you kind of evolved and you've pushed past the milestones of going from people pushing back to then being raving fans. What is maybe some pieces of advice or some tips that you've kind of picked up along the way that helped you really stay true to those morals and values and really push forward as you guys have continued to grow?
Hmm. I think this is such a piece of my mom's wisdom. She is just so consistent and true to her beliefs. And she's always really instilled in me. I was definitely rebellious and didn't agree for many years, but this really deep rooted truth that our connection to nature and to our planet and really our connection to nature and the elements, which fun fact, I don't think everyone knows OSEA actually means ocean, sun, earth, and atmosphere. And that's really inspired by our connection to nature. We lead with the ocean, but it's all so in balance for us with every element. But it's staying totally true that it's our connection to nature that is so responsible and so tied to our own wellness. And what's good for us has to also be good for the planet. And that's an evolving practice and set of choices within the company. And really, I think it becomes very easy to stay true to what we believe because for us, it's just not really a choice. Like being clean and having a safe product is the reason we have the company. And so we wouldn't do it otherwise. And it just there's no option if
Mm,
that kind of makes sense. And because it's just so true to our beliefs.
yeah, absolutely. Whenever you look back at your journey with the company, I know that there was one point that you maybe left for a period of time and then you came back. Can you talk us through that and
Yes.
why you made that decision?
Well, I think it's so funny. And there's always like so much hindsight when you look back at everything in your life and how it happened exactly like it was supposed to. But I became totally obsessed with a hobby, obsession, passion of hula hooping and like a hoop dance, just like this really rhythmic meditative practice, and helped to grow and build a hula hoop company. So in like 2010, the business, I hired one person to work in our family's garage and still stayed somewhat involved, but just had to go follow this passion. And my mom really encouraged me. And for a couple of years, ran this hula hooping company. I basically feel like I went to business school. And prior to that, OSEA was still a really small company. It was just my family. Other family members had helped out. It was still all in the garage. We were selling in the spa market. And with the hula hoops, I got to have such an incredible learning journey. Everything from going on Good Morning America and selling like $1 million of a product we had to hand make to just totally wild ups and downs. But I learned about digital marketing and e-commerce at that time. And after I left that business, I was like trying to figure out my next move. And I decided to just tweak with OSEA a little bit, build a website, start social media, and just do that before I did something else. And that was 9 years ago. And I think since then we've grown about 8,000%. We now have a team of 60. And we're available in thousands of stores, and it's just a totally different world. So um I would have never guessed that I would learn everything I needed to grow Sia from selling hula hoops, but it was the perfect teacher.
I
Wow.
love that. That's so cool and such a plot twist, right? Of being able to follow your passions and letting that kind of be the teacher, of surrendering kind of to the experiences that are unfolding and trusting that it's all working out for you.
Totally. And there
Uh,
was really a through line between the businesses,
yeah.
in two ways, both CPG, but also both really focused on the thing that's most important to me in any product or company is just making people feel good. And that's something we think about with all the interactions with OSEA and in our social and our creative and our model choices or anything we're doing in the sense of the product and the efficacy of the product. It's all about making you feel really good in all of your interactions and helping to pass on that kindness. And being was actually the same thing.
I love that. It's so good. And I think that your authenticity like shines through, right? I think when you're so true to what you love and your passions and your values that it shines through and that people are attracted to it.
Totally. And
I
I
love
think it
that.
really shines through more than anything in the product.
Yeah.
um, I think my job is pretty easy to some degree because the products and the integrity and the results of the product do so much of the work for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's how you build, the community and the raving fans around it, right? Because it's like the product will speak for itself. It's so cool. And it's so cool to hear like the rapid growth spurt that you and the company went through of going from really scaling the team, scaling the growth on all sides, it sounds like. As you were going through that transition, I'm curious, going from a family run business out of your garage, you were saying, to then running a team of 60, what were some of those first hires that you guys kind of really needed as you were transitioning out of just the family business?
I think that the first hires, I used to say it was like 6 to 7 jobs in one. So those first hires just had to be really smart and really adaptable. And some of our key team members are those same people today, and they've evolved into maybe 1 or 2 jobs. They probably still wear more hats than anyone in the company because that's just how we did it. And I still kind of see everything that same way. But I would say, like, along the way, some of the really key hires, I mean, in the beginning for me, it was just really hiring really smart people, maybe young and inexperienced, but really smart. And then I really focused on like following their passion and their skill set. Our head of D2C, and he's in charge of all growth in the business and runs, a huge amount of our revenue. He started out kind of as my assistant. He'd been an office manager, and he was just really smart. And we've been working together 8 years, and became very apparent quickly that he was gravitating towards this part of the business. So that beginning team was really following where they were getting pulled. And a hire that we made much earlier than I think I wanted to was a chief of staff. And she ended up really focusing on HR and people ops. And that was something we did much sooner. And I'm so happy that we did because it helped us to create, I mean, investing in HR and people ops early, I think, is one of the most important things, but it helped us to just maintain a culture and to it's constantly still evolving, but it's also really smart because there's so many areas of risk and so much to learn in that space as well.
Absolutely. I think, growing a team is what we've found is one of the most rewarding and most challenging parts
Oh yeah.
of running running the business. That maybe we didn't even anticipate was going to be part of it. I was listening to another interview that you were doing, and you were talking about, you know, how at one point I think there was something that happened where it was like a $200,000 risk, and um and if that happened at that, you're like, the business is done. We are over. And now you're dealing with like multi-million dollar maybe risk, or maybe, correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm curious to hear from your viewpoint of growth and of scaling, and the things that people should be looking out for, or maybe expecting or not expecting.
Well, I think it's something I never thought about in the beginning. One thing that I think is like a helpful aspect of my success is I just have blinders on. I just somehow, and I think to be a successful entrepreneur, there's so much craziness around you. You just have to stay so focused. So I just didn't really consider how much I would have to grow in tandem with the company. So I think I remember that interview. I was really trying to communicate that if I 8 years ago could see myself now, my mind would be blown. The comfort that I have with so much more pressure, with so much more risk at the same time, and so much more reward. So for me, something that's been really supportive is just continuing to grow myself through coaching, through peer groups, through personal growth, through therapy, through peer relationships with other founders, and just realizing, like, okay, right when I think I've got it, we're going to hit a next level. Or I think that's been a consistent thing. It's like right when I'm comfortable, it's a new level. Or it's a new set of challenges. Always, we've been on such a fast growth path, always accompanied by more growth too. So the growth is really cool, but it just always is part of challenges. And I think I've also just developed a lot more calm around challenges because if there's one thing that's consistent, it's that.
Yeah, so true, right? Every entrepreneur out there is shaking their head. It's just so true. We always are going through a new level, a new set of challenges. And it really is kind of our opportunity to look at it as kind of this push out of our comfort zone, push to the next level. And it's been so cool to hear your journey and how you've really been able to not only push to those next levels on your own, but it sounds like as a family and now as a company, being able to mentor and help people. So we always like to end on this note, but I'm curious, the next 8, 9, 10 years from now, where do you really see yourself going? What would you say your next big move is and the direction that you're heading into next?
So, in the nearer term future, over really the next 4 years, our biggest next adventure is international expansion. We just launched this fall, though closer to their summer, in Australia and New Zealand. And that's been really exciting to see. And it's a whole big world. And 99% of our business is in North America, and of that, almost entirely in the US. So, international is a huge challenge, and so much of our brand is really all about our California roots, our connection to a specific lifestyle that's so tied to California and the beach and the ocean, and figuring out how we're going to share that message throughout all these new markets. We have some really exciting category expansion coming up in the next couple of years, to really continue to solidify our position as a wellness brand. We've never really considered ourselves a beauty brand, but we really do see ourselves as a wellness brand. So I'm excited about that. And I think in terms of my journey with the business, um, I I think I just have a lot of exactly what my mom told me and I totally resisted, which is surrender that our mission and vision is taking us on a journey. So I think as long as I can continue to be the right leader for the business, I want to be working on OSEA as long as I possibly can. And I want to just continue to share OSEA for generations ahead. We are nearing 3 decades, and I like to think a lot about what OSEA is like in 3 more decades. And to me, that success would be just it almost sounds boring, but like continuing to be exactly who we are. And
Not boring at
Wonderful. It's
all.
yeah,
amazing.
and just
Yeah.
continuing to deliver products that are really safe and clean and effective, and having a lot of fun along the way with product. Like, our body care category has been expanding so much. We just launched our body wash, which is something we never thought we'd get into. We launched this year, we've launched like 3 bestsellers this year, which is so exciting. We launched a new face cream, and so continuing to get back to our roots of facial skincare and then a new body serum. Um, and just like with each product, continuing to tell a story of results and feeling good.
Yeah, definitely nothing boring about that whatsoever. I think that is beautiful. And just like you talk about that, it is the business's growth, but your own personal growth. And there is something so beautiful, raw, and real about just being who you are authentically and the amazing things that can come from that. That is the biggest thing that I'm taking away from this conversation, which is so refreshing and beautiful. So thank you so much,
A lot less
Melissa.
energy to just be who you are. And I always like to say, I don't really have my memory is like it's too filled up with everything in the business to remember any way that I'm being separate than my just exactly who I am. It takes a lot of energy to run a business. So I can't put my energy onto being anything else than just exactly who I am.
I love it. Well, it shines through and it shines through the products. We are truly big fans and we are cheering you on every step of the way, and can't wait to see all of the incredible things that you continue to do. So thank you so much for sharing with us today.
It was so fun. Thank you so much for the opportunity.